Have you ever noticed that letting go hurts more than the loss itself? You want peace, yet your mind keeps returning to the same person. This is not love anymore. It is attachment turning into suffering. Most people believe their pain comes from being abandoned, rejected, or forgotten. In truth, the suffering continues because the mind refuses to release control over what has already left. You replay memories, imagine different outcomes, and unknowingly reopen the wound each day. Stoic philosophy offers a brutal but liberating truth. People are outside your control, but your attachment to them is not. When you cling to expectations, fairness, or closure, you hand your emotional power away. Detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. Today, you will learn 7 brutal Stoic rules designed to cut emotional dependency at its root. These rules will not help you forget them. They will help you stop suffering, reclaim your inner authority, and finally stand steady on your own, alone. Rule 1. Accept this brutal truth. They owe you nothing. Most suffering begins with a quiet belief you rarely question, that someone should have stayed, cared more, or treated you better. When they leave, disappoint you, or turn cold, your mind demands fairness. You replay conversations, searching for the moment they failed you. This demand feels justified, even moral. But it is the first chain you place around your own freedom. It tightens quietly, disguised as self-respect and emotional honesty, but drains your strength over time slowly without mercy. Stoicism cuts through this illusion with a brutal truth. No one owes you loyalty, love, explanation, or consistency. Not because you are unworthy, but because human beings are free agents. The moment you believe someone owes you emotional security, you hand them invisible authority over your inner world. Their absence becomes punishment, and their silence becomes a verdict on your worth. This belief quietly converts grief into prolonged suffering that follows you everywhere daily, even when nothing happens inside you. When you accept that they owe you nothing, something radical happens. The fight ends. You stop arguing with reality, and reality stops punishing you. Detachment begins not with coldness, but with honesty. You see the situation as it is, not as it should have been. This is not surrender. It is the reclaiming of power you unknowingly gave away through expectation, longing, and emotional dependency that once defined your sense of safety and personal identity during moments alone at night. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people act according to their nature, not your hopes. Expecting them to behave differently only multiplies frustration. When you release the demand for fairness, you remove the emotional hook. They can no longer hurt you by leaving, changing, or failing to meet an image that existed only in your mind. This is the moment suffering loses its grip because expectations no longer dictate your emotions or control your inner balance during loss or absence. Practice this rule today. Each time your mind says, "They should have stayed," pause and correct it. Say instead, "They were free to choose, and so am I." Write it, repeat it, let it sting. That sting is the ego loosening its grip, making room for peace. This is how emotional independence is trained, not wished into existence, through conscious repetition and deliberate mental discipline applied calmly during moments of weakness without anger, blame, or self-pity toward anyone else. Accepting this rule does not erase sadness overnight, but it stops feeding it. You begin to feel pain without panic, memory without collapse, and absence without self-betrayal. This is the foundation of Stoic detachment. When you stop demanding what was never promised, suffering weakens, dignity returns, and your mind becomes a place you can finally rest inside again. It marks the moment you choose inner order over emotional chaos and begin standing firmly on your own psychological ground, without needing anyone else to hold you together anymore at all today. Rule 2. Detach from the story. not just the person. When you try to let someone go, you often believe the pain comes from missing them. But if you look closely, what hurts most is not their absence, but the story you keep telling yourself about it. The mind clings to meaning before it clings to people. You're not attached to who they are now. You're attached to what they represented, what they promised, and what you hoped would last. Stoicism teaches a critical distinction. There is the event, and there is the judgment you attach to it. The event is simple. Someone left. Someone changed. Someone stopped choosing you. The suffering does not come from this fact. It comes from the interpretation layered on top of it. They were the ones. I will never feel that connection again. My life was better with them. These thoughts feel natural, but they are rehearsed conclusions, not truths. Epictetus warned that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. When you repeat a story long enough, your nervous system accepts it as reality. The story becomes identity. You do not just lose a person, you lose a version of yourself you believed only existed with them. That is why detachment feels terrifying. It threatens the narrative that gave your pain meaning. To detach, you must challenge the story without attacking yourself. Begin by separating facts from fiction. The fact is, the relationship ended or changed. Everything else is interpretation. They were my happiness is not a fact. I cannot be whole without them is not a fact. These are emotional conclusions created in moments of vulnerability. Stoic detachment begins when you strip the situation back to what is real and nothing more. This practice feels uncomfortable because the story once protected you. It gave your suffering purpose. But holding on to it keeps you trapped. When you release the narrative, you do not erase the past. You remove its authority over your present. The emotional charge weakens because the mind no longer has a script to follow automatically. Practice this rule deliberately. Take one painful thought you repeat and write it down. Then rewrite it using only observable facts, without emotion or drama. Read both versions. Feel the difference. One drains you, the other steadies you. This is not denial, it is clear. When the story collapses, the attachment loosens. You stop romanticizing the loss and start reclaiming your perception. Detachment is not forgetting what happened. It is refusing to let imagination keep reopening wounds that reality has already closed. When you control the story, suffering no longer decides who you are. Over time, this discipline restores inner authority. You realize peace was never inside another person, but inside your interpretation. By choosing truth over narrative, you reclaim your emotional center. This rule teaches you that freedom begins when the mind stops exaggerating loss and starts respecting reality exactly as it is, without compromise. Rule 3. Stop rehearsing the pain. One of the most hidden forms of suffering is mental rehearsal. You replay the message, the tone, the moment they changed. Each replay feels like understanding, but it is actually self-inflicted harm. The mind mistakes repetition for healing, when in truth it is reopening the wound again and again. Stoic philosophy is uncompromising here. To relieve pain voluntarily is to suffer twice. The first pain was real, the second is chosen. Every time you revisit the past without purpose, you train your nervous system to stay attached to what already hurt you. Memory itself is not the enemy. Uncontrolled memory is. When emotion drives recollection, you are no longer remembering. You are reliving. The body responds as if the loss is happening now, tightening the chest, draining energy, stealing the present moment. This is why detachment feels impossible at first. Your mind keeps visiting the same place, hoping the outcome will change. But nothing new is learned there. Stoicism teaches discipline of attention because what you repeatedly focus on becomes your emotional reality. To stop rehearsing pain, you must interrupt it without violence toward yourself. The goal is not suppression, but redirection. When the memory arises, name it calmly. Say, this is rehearsal, not reflection. That pause alone weakens its grip. Next, redirect attention into a physical or purposeful action. Walk, clean, breathe deeply, or write one clear sentence about what you control right now. Stoics understood that the body anchors the mind. Movement breaks rumination faster than argument ever will. This practice must be repeated without emotion or drama. You will fail some days. That does not matter. Each interruption weakens the habit of suffering. Over time, the mind learns that pain is not a place it needs to return to for meaning. You're not erasing the past by doing this. You're refusing to bleed from it daily. When memory is used for wisdom, it strengthens you. When it is used for rehearsal, it enslaves you. Stoic detachment demands you choose. The moment you stop replaying what hurt you, silence appears. In that silence, suffering loses fuel. This is not numbness. It is control returning. What you stop rehearsing no longer defines you, and the mind finally begins to rest. This rule trains emotional strength quietly. Each day you resist rehearsal, you reclaim minutes of life previously spent in imaginary conversations. Those minutes return as clarity, focus, and steadiness. Pain fades not because it was denied, but because it was no longer practiced. This is how suffering starves. Attention is its oxygen. Remove it, and the fire dies. With discipline, the mind learns a new pattern of response. Instead of spiraling inward, it returns to the present task. Over weeks, emotional intensity drops. What once controlled your mood becomes a distant echo, no longer commanding your thoughts or your direction. This is freedom practiced daily, not imagined, earned through repetition, patience, and respect for your own inner order returning home. Rule 4. Withdraw. Emotional investment, not humanity. Detachment often scares people because they confuse it with cruelty. They imagine becoming cold, distant, or indifferent. Stoicism rejects that misunderstanding completely. Emotional detachment is not the removal of care. It is the removal of uncontrolled emotional investment that keeps you exposed, reactive, and wounded. You can still wish someone well while refusing to give them constant access to your inner world. Humanity does not require self-sacrifice without limits. When you continue to check their messages, monitor their life, or react to every emotional trigger, you're not being loving, you're being unguarded. And unguarded hearts bleed the longest. Seneca warned that we must treat emotional energy like a valuable resource, not an endless supply. Every time you invest attention, anticipation, or hope into someone who no longer chooses you, you extend the suffering. Detachment begins when you quietly withdraw that investment without resentment, announcements, or drama. This withdrawal is invisible to others, but powerful to you. It looks like fewer checks, slower responses, and less mental narration. It looks like refusing to imagine what they are doing or how they feel. You stop giving them emotional access, not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Stoic detachment draws a clean line between compassion and exposure. You can hold compassion at a distance. You can acknowledge shared history without reopening it. What you remove is not kindness, but permission. Permission for someone else's actions to disturb your inner balance. Practice this rule deliberately. For 7 days, remove emotional access. Do not look for updates. Do not reread old messages. Do not test your importance by seeking reaction. Each time the urge appears, remind yourself that access is earned, not automatic. This practice will feel uncomfortable at first. The mind will accuse you of being heartless. Ignore that voice. It is the voice of dependency, not morality. Calm distance is not cruelty. It is discipline applied to emotion. As the days pass, something shifts. The emotional charge weakens. Thoughts lose urgency. You begin to feel space returning. In that space, clarity grows. You realize that your peace was never dependent on their presence, only on your continued investment. Withdraw the investment, and suffering loses leverage. Keep your humanity intact, but protect your emotional borders without apology. This is Stoic strength, not withdrawal from life, but mastery over where your energy flows. When you control access, you regain dignity, stability, and the ability to care without self-destruction. This discipline restores self-trust. You learn that boundaries are not walls, but gates you control. With fewer emotional leaks, strength accumulates quietly. Decisions become calmer. Sleep deepens. Your sense of self stabilizes. You stop scanning the world for validation and start directing attention inward. Over time, respect returns, first from yourself, then from others. This is how detachment heals without bitterness and allows connection later without fear or dependence. It reinforces patience, maturity, and resilience, preparing you for healthier bonds built on choice alone. Rule 5. Accept that closure is self-given. Many people remain emotionally trapped, not because the relationship ended, but because they are waiting for something more. An apology, an explanation, one final conversation that makes everything make sense. This waiting feels reasonable, even mature. In reality, it is one of the most subtle forms of self-imprisonment. Stoicism is clear on this point. Closure does not arrive from another person. It arrives from a decision. When you wait for someone else to give you peace, you place your emotional freedom in their hands. If they stay silent, avoid responsibility, or move on, your suffering continues indefinitely. Epictetus warned against this dependency. He taught that freedom begins the moment you stop expecting others to resolve your inner state. The need for closure is often the ego asking for validation, not the soul seeking peace. It wants confirmation that you mattered, that the pain was justified, that the ending was fair. But waiting for that confirmation keeps the wound open. It ties your healing to someone who may never show up. Stoic detachment demands a harder path, granting yourself closure without their participation. This is not denial, it is ownership. Practice this rule carefully. Write a letter you will never send. Say everything honestly, without restraint or self-censorship. Then end it with a single sentence of authority. This chapter is closed. You do not need their agreement. You do not need their understanding. The act itself is the release. At first, this feels unsatisfying. The mind protests. It wants dialogue, acknowledgement, resolution through conversation. But Stoicism teaches that peace does not require mutual agreement. It requires inner alignment. Closure is not a conversation, it is a boundary. When you accept this, something changes. The urge to check messages fades. The need to explain yourself dissolves. You stop reopening the past in hopes of a different ending. The story no longer waits for another character to finish it. This rule restores dignity. You stop asking permission to move forward. You stop bargaining with memory. The emotional energy once spent waiting returns to you. Quietly, without drama, suffering loses another anchor. Closure given to yourself is stable. It cannot be taken away, delayed, or revoked. It does not depend on mood, timing, or someone else's maturity. It is an internal act of self-respect. When you close the door from the inside, you regain control of your emotional space. The past remains, but it no longer governs your present. This is Stoic detachment in its purest form. You free yourself not by being understood, but by deciding that understanding is no longer required for peace to exist in your life today. This choice is quiet yet powerful. It marks the moment you stop chasing answers and start reclaiming direction. Pain may still appear, but it no longer controls movement. By choosing closure within, you prove to yourself that healing is an action, not a favor granted by others at last. Fully, consciously. Rule 6. Replace attachment with discipline. When emotional attachment begins to fade, it leaves behind an empty space. This space can feel unsettling, even frightening. Many people mistake this emptiness for loss, but in Stoic understanding, it is simply unused energy. If left unstructured, the mind will rush to fill it with longing, memory, or regret. This is why detachment often collapses without discipline. Stoicism teaches that emotion follows structure. Where your time goes, your feelings follow. When attachment ends, discipline must take its place, or suffering returns through the back door. This is not about becoming rigid or harsh. It is about giving the mind something solid to stand on when emotion weakens. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a human being's task is to do the work in front of them, regardless of internal storms. Discipline anchors you to action when feelings offer no guidance. It does not ask whether you feel ready. It simply directs you forward. Begin with one disciplined act each day, especially at moments when you feel the urge to reach for the past. When the mind drifts toward them, move your body. Train, walk, clean, write, work. Discipline interrupts emotional hunger by replacing it with purpose. This practice feels mechanical at first. That is its strength. Discipline does not negotiate with emotion. It does not require motivation. It creates momentum through repetition. Over time, the mind learns a new association. Discomfort now leads to action, not rumination. Stoics understood voluntary structure as emotional protection. When the day has order, the heart has fewer places to wander. You are not suppressing feelings. You are redirecting it into effort that builds stability and self-respect. Choose simple, repeatable actions. Wake at a fixed time. Move your body daily. Eat simply. Reduce distractions. These are not distractions from healing. They are the foundation of it. Through discipline, you reclaim agency over your inner world. As days accumulate, something unexpected happens. Emotional attachment weakens without confrontation. You do not argue with longing. You outgrow it. The mind becomes occupied with what is being built, not what was lost. Discipline also restores identity. When attachment ruled, your sense of self revolved around another person. Through daily structure, you remember who you are without them. Strength returns quietly, without announcement. This rule is brutal because it offers no shortcuts. Discipline does not comfort you, it stabilizes you. In that stability, suffering finds no place to settle. Over time, discipline replaces emotional dependency with self-trust. When the urge to attach appears, discipline responds with action. That response, repeated daily, rewires the mind. Attachment fades not through resistance, but through irrelevance. You become occupied with becoming, not remembering. This is Stoic detachment in motion, not passive acceptance, but active redirection of energy. Discipline is the bridge between letting go and moving forward. Walk it daily, and suffering loses its ground beneath your feet. With structure in place, emotion no longer dominates decisions. The mind learns consistency. Confidence grows from keeping promises to yourself. Gradually, peace emerges, not as relief, but as a byproduct of order, effort, and regained self-command that remains even when feelings fluctuate again. Rule 7. Love fate, even this pain, amor fati. The final step of detachment is the most demanding because it asks for more than endurance. It asks for acceptance without resentment. Stoicism teaches a principle called amor fati, the love of fate, not tolerance, not resignation. Love. This is where emotional freedom is completed. Most people ask why this happened to them. Why did this person leave? Why was the timing cruel? Why the pain feels unnecessary? These questions feel natural. but they quietly keep you in opposition to reality. As long as you argue with what occurred, suffering remains active. Amor fati ends that argument. It does not say the pain was pleasant. It says the pain was necessary. Necessary not as punishment, but as training. Stoics believed every hardship carried instruction. The question is not what was taken, but what is being built. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle becomes the way. The loss you resist is shaping your discipline, boundaries, and self-command. If you reject it, you reject the growth attached to it. Loving fate means claiming that growth fully. This does not require emotion. You may not feel grateful. That is irrelevant. Amor fati is a decision of perspective, not a mood. You choose to see this pain as part of your formation rather than evidence of your failure. Practice this rule carefully. Write down 3 ways this experience has strengthened you, even if the answers feel small. Perhaps it revealed emotional dependency. Perhaps it forced solitude. Perhaps it exposed where discipline was missing. These insights are the raw materials of transformation. When you accept pain as training, it loses its poison. Memory no longer stings, it instructs. The mind stops asking what went wrong and starts asking what must be refined. That shift marks the end of suffering as identity. Amor fati does not make you passive. It makes you unbreakable. You stop needing different outcomes to feel at peace. You learn to stand steady in any circumstance because nothing is wasted. This rule completes detachment because it removes the final trace of resistance. You no longer wish the past away. You incorporate it. The pain becomes part of your strength, not something to escape. When you love fate, attachment dissolves naturally. There is nothing left to cling to or resent. Everything that happened becomes fuel. The mind no longer splits reality into acceptable and unacceptable. It accepts fully and moves forward with dignity. This is Stoic freedom. Not the absence of pain, but the absence of struggle against it. When you stop resisting what shaped you, suffering has no role left to play. What remains is clarity, strength, and a quiet confidence that nothing life gives you is outside your ability to transform into wisdom. Amor fati teaches that even loss belongs to you, not as a wound, but as a lesson claimed. When you accept this, detachment completes itself. You no longer seek escape from pain. You stand within it, understand it, and walk forward stronger, calmer, and whole. You've just walked through 7 brutal Stoic rules designed to do one thing: end emotional suffering by restoring your inner authority. We began with the hardest truth, that no one owes you their presence, their loyalty, or their explanations. We learned to detach from the stories that exaggerate loss, to stop rehearsing pain that keeps wounds open, and to withdraw emotional investment without losing our humanity. We accepted that closure is self-given, replaced attachment with discipline, and finally learned to love fate itself, even when it arrives through pain. These ideas are not meant to be admired. They are meant to be practiced. Choose one rule and apply it today, not when you feel ready, but precisely when emotion resists it. Stoic detachment is not coldness. It is self-respect trained through action. Thank you for spending this time strengthening your inner world with me. If this message resonated, take a moment to reflect on which rule challenged you most and begin there. I look forward to continuing this journey with you in the next video, where we will keep building clarity, discipline, and unshakable inner peace together.